Hello, and welcome back to the Balanced One podcast, Soul on Fire. I'm your host, Jordan Younger, and today we've got my dear friend, Kymberly Snyder, back on the podcast for the third time. The first time she was on the show was actually the first time that we met, which was the beginning of a very special and beautiful friendship in our lives. It's so interesting and fun because I have been a fan, as I'm sure so many of you have, of Kimberly's work for a decade. So when I started my blog in 2013, she was a huge inspiration. I remember looking at her blog and her books and her social media and just thinking, this is it. This is the goal. This is what I want. And it's just so special to have her in my life now. And also to connect with her on so many things, because a lot of you probably know Kimberly for her huge trailblazing in the plant-based nutrition community. She's a very well-known celebrity nutritionist. She's so good at what she does. Our last episode together this summer is all about eating plant-based while pregnant and getting all those nutrients in. So I highly recommend listening to that. That was episode number 248. I just had to check. That came out in August. And I'm so excited because today's conversation could not be more different or on a more different topic. So you're getting all of the variety from me and Kimberly with this conversation. Today is all about Kimberly's brand new book, which is called You Are More Than You Think You Are. It is a spiritual book, which is truly what her soul is all about. You'll hear in this episode that she started writing her books 10 years ago with the intention of writing a very spiritual book. And then she just went off in the nutrition direction, which can happen so much when it comes to building a brand and a career. And she has done such an incredible job on all fronts. But her new book, You Are More Than You Think You Are, it is deep. It is full of the wisdom that she's learned on her own journey. I told her it reminds me of Louise Hay. And Louise Hay is like my number one inspiration in life. So that is a very high compliment coming from me. And she also draws on a lot of teachings and practices from her yoga guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. So if you've ever heard of the autobiography of a yogi, she translates that into very accessible, digestible chapters and tips for overcoming struggles. And she also shares a lot of her personal life. So this book comes out in January. You can pre-order it now. She has a lot of amazing pre-order gifts and like incredible different opportunities for people who pre-order the book. So I'm so happy to just have her on this conversation, support her. She's become such a dear friend in my life. I love spending time with her and her husband and their kids. Jonathan and I have so much fun with them, whether we're hanging out at their house in Topanga or in Kauai, our shared mutual favorite place in the world. And this was just a fabulous conversation. So I'm so happy that we did this. I know that you guys are going to love. If you feel inspired to rate and review the podcast on iTunes, I would love that so much. And you can send me a screenshot to jordan@thebalancedone.com so I can thank you by sending you my free Soul on Fire yoga ebook. And before we get into this episode, I want to thank our sponsor for today's show, Art of Tea. I'm so excited because I was working with Art of Tea earlier this year, and this is just a really special opportunity to be working with them again at the end of the year. They're my favorite organic tea company. And now that I'm pregnant, I have been leaning on tea like no other. I actually haven't even been drinking coffee for the last couple weeks. I am just all about the tea, and specifically Art of Tea. They are an award-winning organic tea company based in Los Angeles, and their mission is to impact as many lives as possible through healthy, delicious, and sustainable brews and blends. Each and every Art of Tea product is designed to help you bring grounded moments of peace, serenity, and joy into your life. They have an entire wellness collection, which is obviously completely TBB approved, with handcrafted tea blends rooted in Ayurvedic principles that are each designed to help target specific needs. Their wellness tea sampler pack brings together their cleanse tea, feel better tea, happy tea, and sleep tea. And today you can purchase that and anything else in the wellness collection for 20% off using the code BLONDE. They believe in using only the highest quality ingredients, and they source all of their teas from the top 2% of all teas produced in the world directly from small family-run farms. They hand blend and hand package all of their whole leaf teas in-house in Los Angeles. So every single time you order, your order will be made fresh just for you. They even produce their tea bag sachets in-house. They have a collection of gifts, including ceremonial matcha, teapots, mugs, and a candle in their signature Earl Grey cream scent. It is so perfect. It's so delicious. And it's also the perfect gift for the upcoming holidays. So you have a very special offer for us here. The discount code is Blonde. It is valid for 20% off your entire purchase at artoftea.com from now until the end of January. Enjoy and tag me on Instagram when you try. Now let's head into this episode with Kimberly.
So excited.
I know. Oh, I am like locked in by by cords. Oh my goodness. Okay, it's fine. I'm so happy that we're doing this on the couch, by the way. It just feels so comfortable.
Oh, it's so cozy and just feels really natural.
It does. And I smell your oils. Oh my God, it smells so good.
Thanks,
so
love.
Peaceful.
Yeah, I like using a little bit of oils before I speak. It just feels like centers and
I know. I need to do that more often because like I was telling you before we started recording, I have been so frazzled and up in the air, and we are both air signs.
Yes.
And so, you know, I have just been like, oh my gosh, just running on adrenaline. And so it feels so good to sit down and be present with you.
Oh, I'm so excited, love.
Me too.
It feels like a real treat
I
because
know.
you're such a dear friend of mine, and just to have this one-on-one conversation time feels sacred. And then we
It
get to share
does.
it, which is also amazing.
I know it's the best because it really doesn't feel like work. Like, how is this our work? We're very lucky. And this is your third time on the podcast,
Yes.
second time this year. And on our last episode, we were talking about plant-based pregnancy and nutrition, which has been a favorite for everyone listening to the podcast.
Yes.
And today we're talking about your new book.
Yes.
And it is absolutely just gorgeous.
Thank you.
I have
my
had the
love.
pleasure of diving into it over the last couple weeks, ever since you gave it to me. And it's really special.
Thank you, my love. I have to say, of all the books that I've written, and this one's my sixth, this one feels very different than the other ones. I always go in with that intention of, what can I share? How can I help? But this one sort of really did flow through and write itself. This one the idea came down when I was 34 weeks pregnant with Moses, my baby now who's over a year old. And it was not a convenient time. Imagine like around where you are pregnant. It was just such a strong idea. And I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't push it down. It just really felt like I wanted to come through. So I reached out to Deepak Chopra, who I'd written a book with 2 books ago. And I said, Deepak, here's my idea. And he said, oh my gosh, this book belongs with Hay House. And so I reached out to them and they were like, what's your book about? And then I presented it over Zoom. It was just this beautiful flow. And I did a couple Zoom meetings, wrote a sample chapter. And then 3 days before Moses was born, I signed my book deal.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And then I waited 60 days and then I started writing, but not in a pushing way. I just started just kind of getting in front of my computer and putting pen to paper. I like to journal about what I write. And it just felt like this amazing flow that started to, really snowball and take root. And so this one, as I see this book, sitting in your lap, you are more than you think you are. It really doesn't feel like my book. It really feels like it was channeled through. I feel like I'm in service to the book. All this information, like all this is, about it's like my full playbook for living your best life. And before I've shared parts of my dietary philosophy or lifestyle principles, but this is really my book for everything, creating your best stuff. This is how I started to write books. It's about abundance. It's about vitality. It's about confidence. It's about being more magnetic versus pushing. And these are the very teachings and principles that helped me create all my best stuff. So it's like, here's the playbook. Here's the full deal.
Yes, it's so special. And just to echo that, it is so different from all your other books, which are largely based in nutrition. And that has been a huge part of what you've done. And this is your soul in this book, I feel.
Well, I got to tell you, love, can I tell you a funny story about how this whole nutrition thing started? So I was, seeking, like a lot of us. I didn't really know what I was going to do after college. At one point, I thought I was going to be a doctor. Then I interned in a hospital, and that didn't go so well. So I didn't know what I was going to do. So I started interning for this marketing company, and they had an office in Sydney. So I worked there for a year. I saved some money, and then I ended up backpacking. And what was going to be a couple weeks became a couple months, became a couple years. And I ended up being out there on the road for 3 years. And I did it very inexpensively. I was camping in Africa, just living out of my car that I then sold back. And I was living in these guest houses and places for a couple dollars a day. And in those 3 years, I ended up going to India for many months. And it was then, I remember, I tell the story in the book, I just sort of wandered into this bookshop. And I was really drawn to this one book that was calling out to me by this writer I'd never heard of, Paramahansa Yogananda. And I started reading it, my love, and I felt like this fire go in my spine. And he was talking about unifying principles and oneness and the underlying energy matrix, all this stuff. I was like, what is this? It was really speaking to my soul. And I didn't really know about yoga and meditation at that point. But I really started getting into it, and I started going deeper. And I started, at first I was like, well, how does this fit in? Like all this yoga stuff fit in with being raised Catholic and Christian? Like, is this a different, religion, or what is this? And then I realized it's not about religion. It's not about dogma. It's about oneness. It's about energy. It's about love. It's about expansion. It's about connecting to your true self. And so long story short, I started following these teachings and meditating and doing these techniques and practices. And then I finished backpacking. I went back to New York City because a lot of my family was in the Bronx, Westchester, and Connecticut, where I grew up. And I started really applying these principles. Now, when I got back, I was broke. I had no money. But I was, doing a yoga teacher training. So I was starting to teach yoga, starting to get some privates, which was my main source of income. I was going back and studying nutrition. And, I started this free WordPress blog. And I was just writing what I was passionate about. And then it started to really grow. And then my first celebrity came on and organically found it. And then I got on a film set, and then I started working with more actors and people in the entertainment industry, and it just grew very organically. And I started doing television shows. But the reason I tell you this is because my first book proposal was for a book called Catching the Fire. And it was about some of these principles, and it was about my journey on the road. And HarperCollins, which was my first publisher, wanted to do a book with me. And my first editor, her name was Sarah. She said, "Oh, but look at your blog. Like, people really liking the food stuff and the recipes. So why don't we do a food book first, and we'll do this book second?"
Oh, wow.
So the first book was called The Beauty Detox Solution 10 years ago this year, my love.
Oh my gosh.
So it was published in 2011. And then that started to take off. And then my next book became about food. And that became like what a lot of people saw me as, was this nutritionist. But from the beginning, it was these principles that I was using to create, manifest, create abundance, and, find true love and do all these amazing things. And when I worked with clients, it was all these principles. It was this whole lifestyle. It was their emotional well-being, their perspectives, their beliefs, learning to connect into the true self, doing yoga with them. So it was never just about food. But the funny thing is, that's what the outside world sort of labeled as a lot of my work. So then, there's, as I talk about in the book, there were some really difficult periods I went through in the last few years where I sort of hit rock bottom. And after coming through that, I was like, I want to share what I want to, what I think is really going to help people the most. And so that's where this book came from.
That's so beautiful. So this was you all along. And that's how it goes a lot of the time. I think the public starts to see someone as some kind of niche, and then they want more from you and more from you. And so you give it. And then I do think a lot of people like loop all the way back around to what they were here to do in the first place.
Or, sometimes I think, there's a decision we have to make. And there was, a time before I had the babies, Jordan, where I was working with all these, actors and people, and I was living with them, and I was, doing well and getting to go all around the world and press tours and movie sets and all this stuff. And I remember there was this decision, like, I can keep doing this. It's going great. Started a juice bar at the Four Seasons, like more and stuff was coming. But then, it just didn't feel right in my heart. If I was like, okay, this is like perhaps the easier way. This is the path that is, proven, and I know I can keep going and doing stuff here, and I know I can do really well. But as I talk about in the book, when we learn to really tune in and discern the ego versus the true self, the heart is so intelligent, is so powerful. When we start to go that way, just more and more opens up, and that's real fulfillment. That's when our passions become integrated in our life. That's when the gap closes between just dreaming and manifesting, when we're really in that flow. So I remember just thinking, okay, I just can't do this anymore. I can't just talk about food and put out another food book. Like, this is really what I know in my heart can help people the most. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go for it.
I cannot even tell you how much I relate. Truly, this has been my last couple of years of, do I take the path that I've been on and that is going so well and keep going down that path, or do I leap out of my comfort zone and try to feel truly fulfilled in my soul's calling, which we've talked about, which, writing fiction and these other things that I've been super excited about for my whole life. But then, there's all those, no, my career is great. Everything's going so well. I have a brand. It's that back and forth all the time. So your story is so inspiring to anyone who's looking to also shift what they're doing in a way. And this is all still you. So it's not a huge shift, but you know what I mean.
So it's funny you say that, because what was really important to me in writing this book is that it was very practical. So the subtitle is Practical Enlightenment for Everyday Life, because I think sometimes we get these, big ideas, but we're like, how do we apply this to our life? So the book is in 3 parts. And the first part is getting past the biggest blocks that hold us back. So fear and self-love issues, right? So we need to get past that first. The great yoga guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, says that of the 26 soul qualities that help us reach our highest potential as humans, fearlessness has to be number 1. Because if we don't get past the fear, we stay very small and limited. And then the second part of the book is really embodying more of who you are. So it's about tuning into intuition, creating more peace, being more magnetic, so on and so forth. And then the third part of the book, my love, focuses on what we were talking about: being the most powerful, stepping into your most powerful potential as a co-creator with divine. So it's very specific how you tune into your specific gifts and passions. And then the practices and exercises are about how do you extract that and start to create it into form, into I want to start a fashion business, or I'm so passionate about a recipe website or a new pet food company, or whatever it is. It's about this connecting to this, the formless part of us, this stable, creative, loving, courageous, deeply creative and unique part of us, the true self, and putting that into form. So there is a process, and that's how I was able to start to clarify, I want to do this and this, and this is actually the path forward. And I can say, love, you're talking about writing novels and doing all this fiction. That's the voice of the true self, the gut instinct that speaks to us. That's something that we can't push down. If we do push it down, and many people do, then we may be outwardly successful. We may make the money and have the validation and the followers and all this stuff, but inside it's empty. And yet when we channel that passion, and it's different for all of us, but it's always there, and we start putting it into form, we start to get into that flow, things open up in miraculous ways. I mean, I talked about in the book, I don't know if you got to the part yet, like how I wrote a book with Deepak Chopra.
And tell us that story.
There was just this amazing, so it's a point when my work started to become more spiritual and philosophical and more of, in the self-help realm. My third book was called Beauty Detox Power. And it was about really integrating, energy and working with the chakras and understanding the energy of food and the energy of living and our emotional energy. And so I was like, oh, the best person to get a quote from this book would be Deepak. I had no connection to him. I didn't know him. I didn't know anybody on his team. But I sent it in and I heard nothing. So then I just kept following up, just like that, that like sort of generic email that's on like people's websites. I was very persistent. And that's something that Yogananda talks about is really important, is dynamic will. So it's when we start to really channel our energy and focus forward into something that comes from our heart. So it's different when we're like pushing and we're trying to just follow the ego, which makes us, let's say we're comparing ourselves to others. So we push. That's not of the heart. So the results are not the same. This just came from like deep inside me. Like I really feel like this is meant to be. So I kept following up. And then one day, one like random magical day, I got this email back that said, okay, we got the book in front of Deepak and he loves it and he will provide a blurb. It's like, oh my gosh. I remember I happened to be visiting my parents. I remember running around the living room because I was ecstatic.
So exciting.
And so he gave a blurb. And so there was like this connection started to come, right? But I was still not direct to him. I was still with the team. And so I was writing to the team and they were like, okay, Deepak would like you to be part of a video in the future. And I was like, okay. So it was like starting to unfold, but I was feeling intuitively, this is a path forward. And this is an important channel to nurture. And I just kept feeling, and I talk about this whole process and, you are magnetic. It's about aligning to higher frequency and dropping the low stuff, the anchors that hold you back, and really opening up, because everything is energy. As we know, everything is frequency and matching frequencies. This is not like, woo-woo stuff. There's science that supports this. The Stephen Strogrant's, like some of his research, I quote in there about synchronicity that arises in nature out of chaos, where fireflies start, pulsing at the same time. So there is some science to show that this is a real truth. So I was doing these practices and these techniques, and I was, just sort of, dropping down into my heart. I was getting out of my ego. And then one day, my love, it just happened. I was just in that state. And I was walking in New York City where I used to live. And I just felt this push of the true self telling me to walk a different direction around Union Square Park. And I went in around the park and I run smack into Deepak on the sidewalk.
Oh my God.
It was that dramatic. Like this, like face to face. And he'd never met me before. I go, Deepak, it's me, Kimberly. You just reviewed my book. And he just looked at me and he smiled and he was super warm and we connected on the spot. And it was then that he gave me his personal information. And then I was able to connect directly with him. And then we met at a coffee shop and we just connected. And in one, 2.5-hour meeting, we decided to write a book together. We wrote out the title, Radical Beauty. We laid out the 6 pillars, and it was just this flow. So it wasn't this, this pushing that I think in the Western world and, sometimes mainstream media makes us think we have to do. That's when we're on the surface. That's when we're in, what Yogananda calls the pseudo soul, in the ego and the false self. The more we use these techniques to drop in deeper, the solution to creating and magnetizing is not to be found where the issue is. The issue is here on the surface with the ego. We need to go and activate this dormant part of our being, of our personality, and start to work with that energy. And then life opens up.
And then life becomes one huge synchronicity.
It does. So it's like these random things where like, oh, I happened to run into this person, or wow, this thing just happened to work out. It becomes more methodical. It starts to happen. It starts to become more of a regular occurrence because our energy, our frequency becomes aligned with a greater collective energy. So it's like stepping into a river and going down the stream versus trying to paddle upstream.
Right.
And what I'm so passionate about talking about this, with my love is that everybody can step into this river. It's not for, a few, so-called enlightened people, or it's not just for people that sit and meditate for 3 hours a day. There is a real process to this. There are real techniques that anyone can practice. It's easy to do. We just need to know how to direct our energy.
Yeah.
Which is what I love to share about.
Yeah. So what do you think is like the first step for someone who just can't even imagine getting into that headspace of letting go of the ego and stepping into this river?
So I think that, first of all, we all have experiences of the true self sightings, I call it. It's those moments where maybe you're doing the dishes and you just aren't thinking about anything, or you are, I don't know, changing your child's diaper and you're just sort of lost in the love, looking into their eyes. You're in the midst of all the poop and all the stuff, or you're just kind of zoning out when you're driving. It's those like moments of real stillness. So I say that first because even if someone is thinking to themselves, I can't even imagine what it's like. We all have those experiences already in life because it's part of who we are. Each and every single one of us has this true self access that is inside of us. So one of the first practice chapters in the book where I talk about is starting to expand those moments of stillness. And so we can start to do that by as simply as starting to sit and watch your breath. And most people that watch the breath, they start to focus on the inhales and the exhales, which of course is really powerful and really beautiful as well. But what we want to start to watch is the little gaps, the moments in between the breaths where we're in complete stillness. It's like these micro gaps, right? And there's gaps and there's stillness in nature between the sunset, and dusk, and between the sunrise and that moment of darkness. And there's gaps in music, and there's gaps in all things. There's this stillness. So the more we start to connect to that stillness that's available inside of us, and we start to connect to that stillness in life, it can start to grow and expand. And in those moments of stillness is when the true self starts to speak to us through our intuition, through that gut knowing, through that deeper knowing that is the guide. So if we're on the surface of life and if you're feeling really frustrated in your life and you're just being tossed around and just super exhausted, I could almost guarantee it's because you're letting your ego guide you instead of the steadiness of the true self. So again, there's 21 chapters in the book, and each one is a succinct chapter for tuning in to a quality that is already inside of you, whether it's peace, whether it's connecting to your true confidence or your true vitality. And then it's very specific practices to hone in on that, because the whole message is like, we're not trying to get something. That's still very egoic. Like, let me get this. I have to reach for this. I have to grasp for this, versus allowing it. It's like shining off the dust, allowing it to come forth inside of you. So the more we start allowing that to happen from the inside, life just doesn't feel as exhausting anymore. It doesn't feel so overwhelming. It's like little by little, very small steps start to add up into big realizations, big shifts over time.
It's so true. It's so true. And I love the beginning of the book where you talk about how you discovered Yogananda and these teachings, and how the book just leapt off the shelf and you had that fire in your soul. I've had that experience before with books, with walking into like a meditation studio and seeing this Kundalini book like glowing off the shelf, and then it fell off the shelf. And I was just filled with chills. And then I went down the path of Kundalini, which completely changed my life.
Yeah.
This was like 4 years ago. So I felt so connected when I was reading that beginning part of your book. And then it seems like you started to really put those practices into your life pretty immediately. Like you started living differently. So
Immediately.
tell us about that, because that is how you manifested everything from your career to your family, the loves of your life, your children, all of it.
So up until that point, I was in that like real seeker mindset, and I didn't have a spiritual practice. Like I mentioned, I was raised Catholic, and I went to church and all of that when I was little, but I didn't really feel that connected to the church personally. I felt like, it didn't make sense to me, this, going to confession or this like outside sort of thing. And I don't know, it didn't really resonate with me. So I didn't really have this sort of tuning in experience. And then from that moment in Rishikesh, where that fire came in, it was just this knowing that this was something that could tremendously open me up and just changed my whole life. So from that moment, I started going deeper and deeper into it. I started to understand myself for the first time. Up until that point, I was very anxious. My whole sense of self was based outside of me. So what people thought of me, I was always like, am I going to get invited? Am I going to fit in? Go to the cool parties? Am I skinny enough? My skin, like my hair looked good. Everything was external. Everything was like this constant worry. And I didn't sleep well because I'd be up late at night. All these thoughts would crowd in. My digestion was a mess. I was super constipated. My stomach was in knots. And little by little, I started to take these teachings in, which again are very practical. It's not just how to meditate, it's how to live, it's how to look at things, it's how to connect with, career, how to discern, should I go on a second date with this person? Like, all of it, it's all resonance, it's all so practical. And so I started to go forward. And like I said, I just started to understand how to channel my divine will. That first book, again, 10 books or 6 books ago, 10 years ago, it was very difficult to just sit and focus and write a 300-page book. And I didn't have a research assistant. I didn't have any ghostwriters. It was really like learning to channel my energy. But, it's like you start to do something and then it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And so I was learning along the way. And here's the thing, life keeps unfolding. And I continue to make mistakes. It's not that you don't, you do this and like life's perfect. I was with somebody, we had a child together, and then I ended up realizing, this isn't the right person. We're not getting super deep. We're actually like not. Instead of going deeper, it's feeling more and more surface. And as I continued to deepen into myself, I realized it was time to separate from that partner. So it was, again, it's not that life is perfect, but it's that this deepening of that intuition, that deepening of the connection to your true self. No matter what's going on, we all have this place of peace and deep wisdom inside of us. So even when we stumble, even if it's like, oh, this happened, I wish this happened another way, it's unfolding. And so everything just becomes more, it just starts to feel more and more aligned. So I was taking a step forward, making the website, then the book started to come. And then I was, feeling more direction. And then, mistakes happen too. Like, try something. I'm like, oh, that was of the ego. That wasn't actually something that felt that great to create, but it's something I thought people wanted. So I was going outside myself versus like what I wanted to share. So those lessons were coming. But I can say that, after that breakup, and I talk about this story in the peace chapter, I went into this deep period of, about 5 months. I met with a monk from the Self-Realization Fellowship, which is Yogananda's organization. And he said, Kimberly, just treat your home like an ashram, go deep and go into stillness. And so for those 5 months, my older son there he wasn't 2 yet. And I would put him to bed and then I would just read the scriptures. I was reading the Gita. I was reading these sutras over and over again. I was reading the New Testament of the Bible. I was reading about Buddha. I was reading all these different teachings. And I was just meditating so much. And so I was getting to this very still place. And then some months after that, I was at this very random dinner party with someone who came on my podcast. And I was, it was like 12 people there. And I was just like, a little okay, like, what am I doing here? I just said
Mhm.
yes. It was like one of those random things. I didn't really know anybody too much. Um, and one of the person that organized it was Aubrey Marcus, who came on. Anyways, so I was there and boom, there was John, future hubby. And I have to tell you, love, if it had been, a year or two before that, until I had really gone into this deepening of my true self connection, I don't think we would ever have gotten together because on the surface, he registered as like not safe. He's too different. He was, completely covered in tattoos. And not just that, but like he had a gold grill in his teeth and he was like a huge meat eater, at the time. And I'm a plant eater, plant-based person. And he was just into like CrossFit and MMA and motorcycles and all this stuff. And so again, if the ego, which is living on the surface of what our two physical eyes can see, we get blocked, we stumble along, we can miss amazing opportunities, we can miss our soulmate. But because I had been following these practices and I had been introspecting and doing these techniques even deeper, kept getting deeper and deeper, I felt this stillness. I felt more of the vision of my third eye come through where I could feel his heart. And I was like, yes. And so he was like, yes to you. And I was like, well, I'm going on a beach walk tomorrow. And he's like, well, I'll come. And I said, oh, but it's in a few hours. I think we talked about this in the last podcast a little bit. And he came and, we connected and we were together instantly. So I will say that more of that flow, it keeps unfolding. So now I lean on that voice. I lean on that connection. And there's just, like I said, just greater synchronicities, more just opens up in life.
I know, it's so beautiful. And you guys are such soulmates. And we have so much fun with you guys.
Oh, I love hanging out with you guys.
I know, it's the best. It's the best. Well, you can feel when two people are really in love.
Yeah. It's
magical.
It's such a deep connection. And I'm so grateful for that. And I think, not everybody needs or wants partnership in this lifetime. I certainly have a lot of friends that enjoy being on their own, but I will say for anyone that wants that soulmate partnership, there's a lot I talk about in the love chapter, You Are Love, about, drawing that in versus, feeling like, oh, I have to be on every dating app and I'm always just like grasping and running around in the frustration. Instead, we can work to shift things from the inside and draw that in, which I could say, honestly, that's what happened with John. There was no pushing. It was just a very magnetic occurrence.
I love that so much. So what is your biggest tip? I mean, obviously it's in the book, but for people who are seeking love.
So there's a couple of things I have to say about that. There's a story I talk about in the book. I don't know if you've gotten to this chapter, but it's something that Yogananda teaches about this deer. It's a Himalayan deer that lives in India. Did you get to this story yet, love? It's so this deer is it's called a musk deer. I don't know what the actual, formal terminology is, but they'll say it's, the Himalayan musk deer. And in the spring, this secretion of musk comes from a sac underneath its abdomen. And the smell of musk makes the deer very stimulated and very excited. So then the deer starts to want to find where the smell of musk comes from. So he goes underneath rocks and he's searching between the trees and he starts running around and where is this musk coming from? And sometimes, and this is true, the deer gets so agitated because it can't find the musk that it actually like throws itself over the cliffs and falls to its death.
Oh my gosh.
Because it gets so worked up and so frustrated. All along, the musk was coming from inside of them. They were the source of the musk. And so in many ways, I feel like this is the way that we approach love, right? Whether it's romantic love or the love, validation, love from outside of us, wanting to have more fans, followers, likes on social media. That's a form of so-called like validation and love coming in, versus the understanding that love isn't something we ever get. The love is inside of us, and what happens is certain people light up the love energy inside of us. So even from our soulmate partner, even from my husband John, he's not giving me love. He's, this vibration that's activating the love inside of me, like this flame and this fire. I'm not getting anything from him. So that's a really big paradigm shift to talk about first is we don't, have to find someone on, whatever Bumble or whatever it is and get love and get all this stuff. Rather, it's about activating this love. And from that love, because love is a verb, it's not a noun, we start to work with the energy of love. So we put it into action. We do something wonderful for someone else. We give compassion, love in action. So once we start to activate that love, and again, there's specific practices for this in the book, we start to put that energy into an action form. And then that attracts more partners than you could ever want. Or,
Yes.
It's very different than like sitting back and trying to get it, because now you're working again with that flow, that energy of love in an active form, because you've activated it in you. So then it's active instead of, being dormant. Again, so many of these qualities are dormant. And then when we try to sort of get them in the ways that we've been taught or that we think from the ego, which is out here with the two physical eyes, versus activating the energy deep in your core, that's when the arduousness comes in. That's when people complain, oh, there's no good guys left, or no good girls, or whatever it is, or, people, whatever it is, because we haven't yet realized how to activate that flame in us.
Yes. Yes. That speaks to me so much.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a powerful shift.
It's
powerful.
It is.
And again, this is, it's not that you don't do any work. In the book, there are practices, there are exercises, there's paradigm shifts. But I will say that it's not more work than what you're doing right now, right? It's a shift of the work. It's like a shift of energy. It changes everything.
Shifting to the positive instead of focusing on
instead
the
of the
pushing.
Mm-hmm. It's something that is very fulfilling, because it's something that we activate from the inside in specific ways. And even if you've read, like self-help books, or, I'd read so many, these teachings, which are ancient, we're always looking for like the new study or the new biohacking thing. There is so much value in old things, in really old things. And these ancient practices that, I had dusted up these old books of thousands of pages and really synthesized them here. There is, that's why I illustrate them with these personal stories and the research of today to show like how applicable this is. This is so powerful. These are the things that have really helped me create this soulmate love and, the business and Soluna, and write these books and do all this stuff, because they're universal truths.
They are.
And they speak to all of us.
Okay, let's talk about Sakara, my favorite plant-based meal delivery service that has completely changed my life. If you're looking to change your diet instead of restricting what you eat, what if you focus on nourishing your body with the healthiest and most nutritious food? With Sakara, you're putting the best in your body so that you can feel your absolute best. You want to feel better about everything that you eat, but for a lot of us, we just don't have all the time, and we also don't always know how to make the healthiest food taste good. But with Sakara, they help us reach our health goals without sacrificing taste. Sakara is a nutrition company that focuses on overall wellness, starting with what you eat. Their organic, ready-to-eat meals are made with powerful plant-based ingredients, and they are designed to boost your energy, improve your digestion, and get your skin glowing. The menu of creative, chef-crafted breakfasts, lunches, and dinners changes weekly, so you'll never get bored, and it's delivered fresh anywhere in the U.S. Along with their plant-rich meals, they also offer their daily wellness essentials, like supplements and herbal teas to support your nutrition. Experience the power of plants as medicine with their best-selling metabolism super powder. Made with organic raw cacao, it works to boost energy, eliminate bloating, minimize sugar cravings, and reduce fatigue. And right now, Sakara is offering our listeners 20% off of their first order when you go to sakara.com/balanced and enter the code blonde20 at checkout. That's Sakara, SAKARA.com/balanced to get 20% off your first order. Sakara.com/balanced and enter the code blonde20. Enjoy, you guys. Tag me on Instagram when you try. I know you're going to fall in love with Sakara, just as I have. Okay, let's get back into this episode with Kimberly. The ancient wisdom is so important to draw on. And at least in my life, I forgot that for so long, or I didn't know that until the last few years. And so reading back on like the yogis and the Stoics and all of that, they held so much wisdom.
Yes.
And life is not that different now than it was then on a soul level. Yes, the world around us is completely changed, but on a soul level, they have so much wisdom for us. So I love that about your book, that you're really drawing on Yogananda and then sharing in this very accessible way these original teachings that are not as accessible. I mean, I originally read his autobiography of a yogi in my teacher training, yoga teacher training, when I was like 21, and it just didn't speak to me because it wasn't accessible to me at the time.
Yes. And also, speaking about Yogananda for a moment, just as a brief introduction, he is the one who really brought yoga to the West. So before that, Swami Vivekananda had been here for a time, but he didn't stay. Yogananda felt that call from India, where he had a boys' school and where he thought his life's work was going to be. And it came down to him, you must bring yoga to the West. And this was foretold by Lahiri Mahashaya, which was a great yoga guru, a Kriya yogi. And by the way, Kriya yoga, the specific type of yoga, which I talk about in the book, is mentioned twice in the Yoga Sutras. It's the only specific type of yoga that's mentioned. So it's part of, Raja yoga, these taking the best, highest forms of yoga into the most effective system. So it was foretold to his parents, who were devotees, that he would come to the West, and he didn't want to, but it was that call. So he came here and he started, sharing these universal truths, and it was like this bomb went off. It just started to connect to people in such a big way that he met with the president of the United States at the time, who was Calvin Coolidge. He started, all these, people started flocking to him to hear about these truths, because again, it was so universal and people in the West had never heard of them. And, eventually at the end of his life, Elvis Presley started practicing Kriya yoga, and the Beatles and Steve Jobs. The only book on his iPad was Autobiography of a Yogi when he passed.
Yeah.
And as it's mentioned in the book, and it was said he read Yogananda's teachings every year to help activate his creative genius. So now I felt this call of like, hey, I see a lot of suffering right now. People are lost, like as far as their purpose. They don't know what they want to do. They feel so much angst of comparison, like being on social media and not feeling good enough or not pretty enough or not smart enough, or just, I just feel like now more than ever, these teachings are meant to come back into the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like I said, this book doesn't feel like mine. It's just more like, here are the teachings. This is how it's really applicable to modern day with these stories. Mm-hmm. And then the science for the discerning mind to show, like, more and more science develops. It actually supports what these teachings held. There's so much wisdom. Yogananda was on that path of showing this wisdom was universal, and it could be applied to anyone, whether you are agnostic, you have no faith, or you have faith, you are, a Catholic or a Jew or a Muslim or Hindu or whatever you are. These are universal truths. You can take that connection to self. You can take meditation into wherever you are in your life. Mm-hmm. And it's really for everybody.
Yes, absolutely. I love it so much. So inspiring. And you have such a gift of making it digestible and making it practical, which is the subtitle of your book, and sharing your stories, because people relate to your life and the modern day stories and looking for love and overcoming self-esteem issues and everything that you talk about in the beginning.
Oh my gosh. All of it love. I feel like, I've been through a lot. We've all been through a lot. And there was that moment where, my life was just not turning out the way I wanted it to be. It was, that period where I was a new mom. My son wasn't one yet. when my mom passed. It was a new mom. And then all of a sudden I lost my mom, which was like a big one. And then some months after that, I became a single mom. And, in my family, it was, kind of this feeling, this belief, like you work it out. Like no matter what, you work it out. There's no divorce. That's like not how it happens. And so I was just sort of, in this time where I felt really low self-esteem, and I had this big label of myself, single mom, and I didn't know if I would ever find love again. And I really felt like a failure. When you go through something like that and like a relationship ends, there's that, like, I know it's weird because you think of failure in a job, but I felt like a failure in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, it was that time of great struggle where I started to like really lean on the teachings, and look what emerged from it. It took time, but I started to rebuild my relationship to trust. And I didn't realize that I had such a broken relationship with trust. And I talk about this in the book. We have to have trust of life, trust of this greater plan, trust of the voice of the true self. Otherwise, we stay in fear, and we stay in a very small life. We stay limited. We stay like just playing on the surface with like all these egoic things and trying to hustle and be liked from the outside. We take things really personally, which you and I were talking about. We feel those slights. We feel that annoyance. We feel, competitive with other people. But there is a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm so passionate about sharing. There is a way to go deeper beyond that. And the suffering and the struggle gets so much less. So I'm not saying that I don't still stumble sometimes and fall into those tendencies, but I can say with honesty, with sincerity, it's like 95% better from these teachings, and it's available to everybody. And so this is the time, I think, to really, take a hold of this that's available to all of us. I think it's our birthright to just shift our lives and to open up our lives in this different way. And we don't have to play into the limitations of the ego anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a deeper way to live with so much more joy and so much more expansiveness.
Yeah,
and so much
get
less
into the flow.
So much less suffering.
And the other thing I want to say is that I think we live in this world where it feels like a lot of limitations, right? Like, oh, there's only so much of this, and and like, I don't know. It just feels like, oh, this field may feel really crowded, or there's so many people already trying to be designers or nutritionists or whatever it is. And I will say that what these teachings very, very clearly state, and this comes also from the Bhagavad Gita, is that each and every single one of us is spirit individualized. That means each of us has a very unique blueprint. So when we learn to work with that blueprint and we learn to work with that energy, we become these warriors, right? These warriors. We start to intuit how we fit into the greater plan. So along with just, wanting us to be successful, we start to naturally include serving others and helping others in all the unique ways. It's not just, oh, I volunteer, but, oh, I really, create this company that has this beautiful company culture that inspires others. Or I work at Starbucks right now, but I bring so much joy to each customer that comes. However, we bring that energy. So we become these warriors, and more energy starts to come in, and we include this service to others. And when we start to tap into that, I don't care what field you're in. I don't care what you're trying to create. You create something so unique. You don't have to worry about being competitive with other people, because there really is just you. So all this energy we waste on what's such and such doing, and like, oh my God, look at how much, like this is, she's doing this whole retreat on social media, and like, I only have 2 people signed up for my retreat, or whatever that is. Yes, we have to do dynamic will. Yes, we have to use right action. But at the same time, we just feel this, like we said, this openness, this expansion, this creativity come in, where what used to feel so arduous and so much of a struggle doesn't have to feel like that anymore.
Yes, completely. And that makes me think about social media in general, and just how much time so many of us waste by comparing our lives, not even on purpose. Like, none of us get on social media with the intention of comparing our lives and scrolling and not feeling good about ourselves anymore. But it happens. It happens to the best of us. It happens all the time. And so something that we were talking about a little earlier was like taking social media breaks when you feel called to do that too, especially while doing this work. And I think reading your book, this will ignite that feeling in people of feeling inspired to just not want to live that way anymore, because we don't have to. We don't have to be trapped in our minds in that way.
Totally. And I will say like 2 practical tips for social media, like right now.
Yes, tell us, please.
Is number 1, connect in to the true self before you go on social media. So ideally, you would spend at least, even if it's 5 minutes, 7 minutes close to when you wake up, meditating, finding stillness before you go on social media. That way you are connected to this well, this deeper well of peace and again, just support for yourself. And it's easier to go back and drink from the well during the middle of the day once you drank from it in the beginning of the day. So I put out these practical enlightenment meditations every week now. They're free. You can find them on our Soluna app or on our website, and they're about 7 minutes. And there's different ones for grounding, for activating your solar energy, all these different ones. So if you want to check them out, or any meditation that resonates with you, I definitely recommend getting centered in yourself before you go out, because otherwise the ego takes over. And then my second tip is to really batch when you're on social media. So just like the way you brush your teeth in the morning, at night, you have to create a schedule. Like I'm just making this up, 8 to 8:20, I check in. And then I go on like 12 to 12:15 or whatever it is, like, whatever, evening time. If we're getting these alerts and like we're kind of going on like haphazardly throughout the day, we get pulled. Our energy starts to dissipate out of the true self because we get so caught up in what other people are doing. Those little dings of like, oh, look at how many more followers she has. Oh, look at, she can afford these amazing outfits and you can't, or whatever it is. The voice of the ego starts to crowd in. So we want to center ourselves first, and then we want to really batch when we're on there.
You guys, you know what time it is. It is time to talk about olliepop, the healthy alternative to soda. Olliepop tastes just like the sodas we all grew up with, but without the spoonfuls of sugar or any artificial ingredients. They have delicious, nostalgic flavors like vintage cola, classic root beer, orange squeeze, cherry vanilla, and strawberry vanilla. They use functional ingredients that combine the benefits of prebiotics, plant fiber, and botanicals to support your gut microbiome and benefit your digestive health. What I probably love the absolute most about olliepop is that they are so much lower in sugar than conventional sodas, with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar from natural sources and no added sugar. You guys know I live a sugar-free lifestyle, so this is very important in order to be TBB approved. Their vintage cola has only 2 grams of sugar as compared to a regular Coca-Cola, which has just about 40 grams, and nobody needs that. All of their products are non-GMO, vegan, paleo, and keto-friendly with less than 8 grams net carbs per can. They are so confident that you will love their products that they offer a 100% money-back guarantee for orders placed through their website. We have worked out an exclusive deal for our TBB listeners where you can receive 20% off plus free shipping on their best-selling variety pack. This is a great way to try all of their delicious flavors. Go to drinkolliepop.com/blonde or simply use the code blonde at checkout to claim this deal. That's drinkolliepop.com/blonde. This discount is only valid for their variety pack. You can also find them in over 3,000 stores across the country if you want to shop in person, including Whole Foods, Sprouts, Kroger, Wegmans, and Erewhon. Okay, now let's get back into this episode. Such good tips. I know I'm thinking about my morning this morning before I saw you. It was totally the opposite of what you're saying. And typically I've been pretty consistent with my centering and grounding, meditating. Not today. And usually on Wednesdays when the podcast comes out every Wednesday, I wake up and I always feel pulled. Oh, I should just like share about it right away because I don't want my guests to feel like I'm not excited and all this stuff. I get right on social media. We have this new podcast artwork that I like, but it needs some tweaks. And so I was just having this super frenetic morning of like, oh my God, my new artwork. I like the old artwork. Why did I do that and all this stuff? And it's so silly. It's like, I always joke, I don't really feel like such a human. I feel like I'm from somewhere else. It was such a human morning. It was such a caught up in the little things morning. And these tips that you're sharing are super helpful.
Yeah. And you know what, love, we're still going to have those mornings because it's not about being perfect, but the more mornings we feel the difference. That's the other thing. Like Yogananda was very clear about this. This isn't about accepting any teachings blindly, right? It's about experiencing it in yourself. And I talk about this here, test it for yourself. And when you start to do these practices and techniques and meditations, you will notice a difference in yourself. And so you will actually want to do the practices. It's not so arduous over time. In the beginning, it may feel restless or like, oh gosh, I have to sit and write this out or whatever it is. But over time, you start to feel such a difference. Very naturally, your lifestyle starts to shift. And sometimes, things get crazy and the morning gets off and you take a step back and you're like, okay, that was a hectic morning. So tomorrow I'm going to really, try to get back to it. So we keep recorrecting.
Yeah, we learn from these experiences that are not as fun. Well, I don't want to have another morning like that. So I want to feel good. So tell us what does your daily spiritual practice look like?
So for me, I have shifted my whole lifestyle. I will say, even since Moses was born, because in the beginning, you'll see very soon, my love, newborn phase. It's hard to create a real schedule when baby is up every 2 hours and everything is crazy. But for me now, he's 16 months. So this is down the road, but now I know when he wakes up generally, which is around 5:30. So I go to bed very much earlier than I used to. I try to go to bed now, ideally by 9:30, whereas, there's times I went to bed at 11 or whatever. So hubby and I have made a commitment to going to bed earlier because we want our time together, which means family dinner is earlier. All this stuff we get up earlier to work. So we finish work earlier. So we have that time together in the evening after Moses is in bed and Emerson, my older son. So my spiritual practice is, first of all, I need a break, an actual delineation between the day and when I start to go into that quiet time. For me, that's a shower. So warm shower means no more emails, the end of work, the end of, futzing around. And so I take a shower. And when I do that, not only is the water hitting my skin, but I imagine that I'm letting go of the day. And I just imagine that the water is like this warm white light, just sort of coming down and cleansing any hooks, cords, attachments with other people, just, the endless to-do list. I just imagine it going down the drain, getting recycled energetically. And then I kind of prepare myself for bed. I do my, skincare routine, all of that. I touch my skin. And then I do my evening meditation practice. And that is generally, I like it to be 30 minutes or so. If I have time, I go further. And then in the morning, I have to say now, I wake up. This is so, again, this may sound like, oh my God, but now that I've been meditating now for 12 years, I do get up and I like to meditate at least an hour before the children are awake, which means generally waking up around 4:30 in the morning. So then I'll sit right up in bed. I have my meditation spot that I go to during nap times or in the middle of the day, but right now it's just practical because I can hear if the baby wakes up earlier, I just have more time. So I'll sit right up in bed, face towards an altar. We have this altar in the corner of our bedroom, and I sit up and I do the practices that I teach in the practical enlightenment meditations, and also in the book. And I do that. I try to do it for an hour. It doesn't always happen if he happens to get up early or whatever, but I do it first thing before emails, before text, before social media. And I feel that pull sometimes because a lot of my Saluna team is on the East Coast, but I still really do that. And oh my gosh, it makes a very big difference. Then the craziness starts, right? The kids come in and I have to make lunch. I have to do a million things by 8 o'clock. There's school lunches, diaper changes, getting them both dressed, driving my older son to school. But what I do is I chant during that period. So sometimes it's just the bija mantras, like, the Ram, the Vam, like working with different chakra energies, or sometimes it's some mantras by Krishna Das or someone I love. But I like to keep that morning time in the chaos still very, spiritual, just very connected in before I really get into like speaking and writing into the day. So the chanting part is something I like to do as well.
Wow. That morning is my goals for a spiritual morning. And what I'm hearing, which I totally relate to also, is that when you feel that spirituality shift your life, you just make your life, you make it a spiritual life. Okay, now I'm speaking in total pregnancy brain, but your whole life is kind of this moving mantra at this point. Like, you do your meditation, that's the moment, but also when you're in chaos and you're with your kids, you're chanting and you're listening to the music and all of that. I feel like you probably do that all throughout your day.
Well, yeah. And listen, love, like I'm saying, I've been doing this now for 12 years. So this did not happen right away. Up until, last year, I would stay up. I like to have, dinners and hang out with friends a lot and drink wine sometimes, or just like do whatever at night. And that was something that was really, important to me. I really liked a lot of social time in the evening. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I like hanging out with friends a lot at night too, like, believe me, I get it. And I was there for a very long time. Doesn't mean I don't see friends. But what it means is I sort of like direct things in a different way. So I may say to a friend, let's go for a hike, like in the middle of the day. Let's have brunch instead of dinner.
Yes.
Right. So it just naturally shifts, not forcing, because I want to go to bed earlier. So it doesn't have to feel like, oh my God, I have to do this because I have to get up and meditate. It's like, it makes me feel really good. Like you said, it's this feeling. It just feels better to me. So the lifestyle starts to shift. And yes, there are time periods of newborn, you're pregnant, you're up late and your back hurts. And I've been there too. And sometimes it's not always going to look so clean. There's a lot of messy periods in life, and that's part of it, going with the flow.
Right.
But I will say that, a few weeks ago, we just launched the pre-sales of the book, and I was so excited. We had all this stuff come out, like the new course that we're giving away for free. And I just felt so good. And then I started getting these like text messages and like these DMs and these comments like, oh, none of the links work.
Oh no.
So I meditated that morning. I had this whole thing, and I was just like, oh, I went on, I was like, wow, none of the links work, and we had just done this big announcement and our email went out. So like my ego was like, oh my God, you're losing all these pre-sales. You have to catch people in the moment, like blah, 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 blah. And then the true self part of me was like, it's okay. Just handle it. So then I emailed, I reached out to Caitlin, called Caitlin, our GM. I was like, hey, like none of the links work. And she was like, oh yeah, tech glitches. She's like, don't worry, I'm going to handle it. And I say this because, the last book, which came out, a few years ago, 2019, I would have been like, oh my God, like the world's ending. Like none of this is so public. Yes. And I can say that, like, oh my God, I made progress, because I just said, okay, we're going to meet each moment as it comes. So it doesn't mean that shit doesn't go down, but what it means is we can bring more of that stable, true self energy to each moment. The Buddha talks about like not being assailed by the past or the present, but meeting each moment with just more clarity and a lot more equanimity. And then things just get worked out in an easier way. It doesn't have to be this big drama, not to get so ruffled up, which then ends up like, shifting the vibration, and it shifts people on your team's vibration. They can feel when you're riled up, and it just sort of is this like cascade effect, versus dealing with it. Deal with it. It's okay.
Yes,
Nothing is so serious.
I know. That's the thing. I mean, when we get out of our heads and we come back into that heart space and that soul space, things like technology and the links not working, it's laughable. But in our lives, oh my God, like end of the world, I could totally relate. And it's so, it's just, it's part of this ride of being a human. And so you dealt with it in a really beautiful way. And it's cool to see how far you've come, saying that a couple years ago, it would have just derailed your day. And that stuff is hard, but it's also like, when we know what's important and we know what we're here for is love and service and joy and this abundance, we're like, whatever. It's people who are meant to get the book are going to check the link again in a couple hours.
It's not this seriousness.
Mhm.
When you were talking, love, I have to tell you another funny example of this, which was October 12th is me and hubby's anniversary.
The day after my birthday.
Right?
Yeah.
Being the balanced sign that you are. So anyways, we wanted to do something special, whatever, but we were in Hawaii where, we just got this farm and you've been to the farm.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So excited you came to visit
home.
me.
We got to be your first
You were
house
our
guest.
first house guest on our land, which was so sacred. So
it was
I loved
so special.
that time
so
we had
meant
together.
To be. Me too.
But anyway, so we were back there, and then it's hard traveling with two children again, 16-month-old and a 5-year-old. Our night flight, our red eye, they're both asleep. We got on the plane, gets canceled. There's a mechanical failure. So we had to go home. Now it's the morning of our anniversary. We get to the airport, flight's delayed another 4 hours. So we're not going to make it back in time to do any sort of dinner, whatever. So we're on this flight for our anniversary. And I have to tell you, these kids were like, their sleep schedule was disrupted. It was a nightmare. We were sitting 3 seats across, but Moses, just like his schedule was off. So he throws up all over me, like guava. It smelled like guava at least, but it was all the guava he overate from our tree.
Yes.
So I'm covered in barf for this like 5-hour flight. Older son, there's none of the screens are working. So he's just like crazy and just like we're trying to entertain him. And then Moses, like just going through all the like dirty diapers and we're just kind of in this like very messy, chaotic plane trip. We're all exhausted. And I looked over at my husband and we just start laughing hysterically. And we're like, this is our anniversary. This is amazing. And then he surprised me. He's like, I'm going to the bathroom. And he like snuck to the back of the plane. And he talked to the flight attendants and they said, we have a very special thing we all need to participate in now. It's, saying happy anniversary to Kimberly from her husband, John. And it was like in the middle of this messiness, this joy that I felt like, just so much gratitude. It was the most special anniversary. It was so memorable.
Yes.
And so it's like when we don't take things so seriously too, these expectations of like, it has to look this way. My wedding has to be exactly like this, or, this event or this post or this dinner or whatever it is. We have to celebrate this exact way. It's like, it doesn't have to be that exact way.
No, it doesn't have to be. And then we can meet the moment and enjoy the moment rather than be so attached to what we thought it should have been.
Exactly. It's just this relaxed way of living because we're living from this deeper place, this deeper true self connection. And again, all this surface stuff, all this like egoic pull, which is really the pseudo self telling us it has to be like this, expecting it has to look like this and whatever. It's not true. And we don't have to buy into it anymore. So life just so much more natural, so much more fun, so much more joyful, so much more peace. And again, I say it again and again, love, because I used to be that anxious mess. I say it is available to all of us. If I'm able to get to this, much deeper peace, I know everybody can as well.
I totally feel that. I love that story. That's so good. If you can enjoy yourself in that moment, which is true. It's like you have this beautiful family that you've manifested into your life. And so when you zoom out, it is funny. It's like,
so
oh my
funny.
God, like I got, beyond the plane with my kids and my husband. And I just can so feel it. I so relate. Because Jonathan. Jonathan is quirky and hilarious, and he would be the same way. I think,
Totally. And you guys will see, like as this unfolds,
we will see
with the baby,
because it's coming for us.
It's coming, and I just, I think that we have to find those moments in the sleeplessness, especially like with babies, and like life just starts to, hormones are adjusting. I just say like, find the humor. Keep it light. I remember when Moses was born and I'd been up all night and, Emerson was in our bed and I was like trying to change the diaper. Like Moses like pooped all over his pants. I was like trying to change and I bent down to pick something up and then he peed all over my head. And it was just like a moment of like, you could either cry or you can laugh.
Exactly. Exactly.
Try to laugh.
And that's true spirituality too. Something that I really got from Ram Dass is humor in the
Yes.
spirituality. I know the
Yes.
more that I go deeper into his work and his books and his quotes, like he was always talking about the humor of this life. Like it's not that serious.
And Yogananda says that as well. He's like, think of life like this play. We're just sort of in this body right now when we're acting out, we're playing out this drama, but it's like a movie screen. It's like, pixelation. It's not all there is. So don't take it so seriously. It's not so dire. We can tune into that. Like I said, this equanimity, this well of peace, this well of feeling more grounded at any moment, where we step back, we pull back from getting pulled into the drama, that the egoic pull. We can start to just disconnect more and more from that and live from this deeper place.
Exactly. Yes, living from the deeper place.
Yes.
And we have to tell the listeners that when we look in each other's eyes, the whole room melts away.
My
it's the
gosh.
shape-shifting beyond.
I have to tell you, love, before we started the podcast, I was like, oh, like what are we doing here? Oh, we're gonna start doing a podcast because when you and I sit together, this happened on the porch. Last time you guys came over for dinner, where everything goes away. I look into your soul, and then I see my soul, like the oneness just starts to like, and it's really like, I'm getting goosebumps again.
Yes.
It's sacred.
I know.
It's profound.
I know. It's so beautiful.
I love you so much.
Make me cry. I love you so much. I'm so thankful for you. Your cold hands feel so good. You're probably freezing in my apartment. I know that you.
It's just my hands. It's always like I always have. Yeah, it's true. I always have that cold hand thing going on.
I'm having like a major pregnancy, like hot day.
I remember those days.
You totally know. And Huddy, he just wants to be close to you. He's been watching you this whole time.
Oh my gosh, I love him. I remember
he's
him
so special.
from our last podcast.
He's my everything. Talk about a wise soul. We also stare into each other's eyes, and I see him shift into all these different animals and spirits, and so many souls coming through on his face, and he teaches me so much.
Wow.
My little 6-year-old.
Amazing.
Is he old? Is Emerson 5 or
he's
is he
5?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he'll be 6 next year.
Okay, Huddy's older. It's so crazy. I can't believe I've had him for 6 years. So crazy.
Wow.
I know. Oh
beautiful.
My gosh, so beautiful. So final question for this conversation at least is do you have a favorite chapter of this book or a favorite piece of this book?
Ooh. I mean, I feel connected to all of it, obviously, like it channeled through, but there's a chapter that right now in this moment, and maybe this is because I'm in the midst of the book launch, that's really speaking to me. And it's the chapter on being a warrior. And I wouldn't have used that term to describe myself. I don't think it in the past. And it may not be a term that, many of us think of within ourselves. But this is basically what the whole Gita is about. The whole Bhagavad Gita is this bringing forth the warrior inside of us and channeling it out with focus, perseverance, this ability to overcome obstacles and serve. So for me right now, that chapter, and I talk about Ruth Zuckerman in that chapter, who came on my podcast, and she was a single mom too, and she started Soul Cycle and Flywheel when she was in her 50s, and she was just this beautiful. She's so kind, she's so humble. So this expression of the warrior, it can be very gentle. It can be the divine feminine playing out. It can be all of these things, but there is this part of us that we can activate, this warrior quality. And when we start to learn to do that and tap in, we create so much goodness in the world. We can create our dreams and include the good of others. And it just is so fulfilling and amazing. And we can all do it in our own unique ways. So for me, that warrior chapter comes to mind first.
I love that. I always love asking authors what their favorite, because everyone has that, that part that speaks, and it might change over time, but that part that just sticks out to you and is so special.
And the other quick story I just want to mention too that stuck out to me is the love chapter. Again, I told the story about the deer, but there's a story where my whole perspective of love shifted because I was blessed to be able to hold my mother in my arms at the hospital when she took her last breath. And so sharing about, love is a verb, love is action, getting past all this different fear. I think that love chapter will speak to a lot of people too. And of course, the soulmate love, the relationship love. But I think that is truly needed in the world today. I think there's a lack of self-love, a lack of real connection to the love inside. There's a lot of, trying to get a partnership love and, maybe not the most aligned, easeful ways. So I think that's a big one too.
Definitely. Oh, people are going to love that chapter on love.
Yeah.
all about the love. So tell everybody where they can find this book and where they can find you and when it's coming out officially, because we're kind of doing this early, which is amazing.
Love. Well, this is November now, and what's really special is we are in this amazing pre-sale period. So if you go to mysaluna.com/youaremore, or you go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target.com, anywhere where you get books, and you pre-order the book today, when a physical copy of the book, you can actually go to mysaluna.com and you can start reading the first few chapters of the book immediately.
That's so cool.
Including the fearlessness chapter, which is very important. Again, we said that's that first soul quality to move through. And if you get 2 physical books, very special, you will get instant access to watching our full course on fear, which is called Beyond Fear, Awakening Freedom to Live Your Best Life. And it's practices, meditations. There's 13 lectures, talks I give. And this is the first time ever I am partly teaching with my husband, John.
Oh my God.
So
I need to go watch these.
He's teaching 4 of the modules with me. So it's very special. So, the pre-order period is not just waiting until January when the book comes, but it's actually getting to have the whole course and get the chapters now. So check it out there, mysaluna.com with 2 L's, and also on social @_Kymberly Snyder.
Those are amazing offerings. I'm so blown away by you. I'm like, how do you even find the time to film all of that? I mean, it's so special. It's
thank you, my
special.
love.
I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
Everybody needs this book. I'm so excited for everyone to read it. This symbol, the butterfly on the front, we talked about it when we were at your house, is so pretty. I think Jonathan said you should get it tattooed on your body if you ever get a tattoo.
It just came through this image, after the title came, "You are more than you think you are." I feel like the butterfly really embodies that when we were in this little cocoon of darkness and like stuck in the ego. And then we start to take flight and realize, yeah, I am so much more.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. It's transformative. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you, my love.
Everyone listening, you guys got to get the book. You're more than you think you are. You guys are all going to love it. And I'm just so happy that we got to do this.
Thank you so much, my love. I love you from the bottom of my heart. I'm so grateful for you. And I'm so grateful for our sacred connection.
Me too. So thankful. I love you so, so much.
Love you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this episode with Kimberly. She is such a powerhouse. She's someone who always inspires me. I know you're going to love her new book. It was so fun to have her on and have a different conversation that deviates from our usual topics about plant-based nutrition and wellness. And we all know that a huge part of wellness is spirituality, especially here on TBB Podcast. So I know you guys will just love her book, and also listening to her talk about it inspired me because you guys know I've been working on a couple of books for a long time, and so many of these principles stick out to me as just things that are so important to talk about and share and spread into the world. And I felt the same way the whole time that I was reading her book. So thank you guys for being here. If you feel inspired to rate and review the show on iTunes, send me a screenshot to jordan@thebalancedmom.com so I can thank you by sending you my free yoga ebook. And I also want to thank our incredible sponsors from today's show, Art of Tea. I'm so excited to be working with Art of Tea again. And just check the show notes for all of the amazing discount codes and links for these brands, and Sakara Life, and also Olliepop Healthy Soda. So check them out. Every time you guys support these brands, you are supporting the show, you're supporting me. You are making it easier for me to release these episodes deep into my pregnancy, and I cannot tell you how much I really appreciate that. And I only, as always, work with brands that I love and use in my everyday life. So you guys are getting all the goods, and I know that you're going to love all of these brands. They also make incredible gifts for the upcoming holidays. So let's get excited for all of that good stuff to come. I hope everyone's having an amazing November. We will be back next week with a solo episode. I'm about to record it next. I'm really excited because it's been a while since we've connected solo style, and they're my personal favorite, along with having incredible guests like Kimberly on. It's another favorite. So thank you for being here. I love you guys. If you have not subscribed to the show, please subscribe. It helps us a lot with visibility, and then you get the episodes straight to your phone every week. I love you. Have a soul on fire day. We'll talk soon.